The Accidental Wizard, Part 8. 6th of February. The voices of the angels are growing stronger in my ear. Whenever I am still, I can feel their presence. Walking through Richmond Park with the dogs, up on the roof of the house on the decking at night, when I'm driving, swimming, lying in bed at night, they're there. Sometimes I imagine them hovering in mid-air, their wings flapping slowly, or just standing next to me peacefully, their wings folded. They want as many people as possible to feel their presence and hear their words. They want me to tell others about what I'm experiencing, so they'll know it too. It's simple. I've heard them, seen what we are convinced are actual images of them and other intelligent beings which exist around us. They say they are more present when they're needed, like now. The human race has lost its centre, its soul, and as a consequence, we are rudderless. To fill this emptiness, we resort to other things like alcohol, drugs, and instant gratification. There is this unquenchable thirst we can't slake, and a hunger we can't satisfy. There's a fear of being alone, that this is all there is. But it isn't. There is so much more if you stop and listen to your inner voice for a while, and maybe pay attention to the angels and archangels around you. They are there. If I say the Nephilim walk the earth, apart from what I've already explained about them, you may not know any more than that. It's interesting they haven't had more of an impact on our consciousness, and I'm not clear why. Their apparent existence is not talked about more. People talk of a conspiracy by the media to keep their existence a secret, but it's beyond me why that should be. The Nephilim were thought to be a race of angels who came to Earth in a humanoid form after angels mated with humans. What distinguished them from everybody else was they were sometimes very tall, had wings hidden under their clothes, had blue eyes, sweeping cheekbones, and blue blood. Does that sound outlandish? Goliath was supposed to be one. Remember, he was the Philistine who was defeated by a little Israelite guy called David, who killed him with a slingshot, and went on to lead the Israelites against the Egyptians, the Pharisee, and the Hittites. The Nephilim took earthly women as their wives, and the descendants of their children are thought to still be around today, which might explain the enormous average height of some African tribes and modern-day giants. Now here's the really strange bit. If you Google Nephilim images, you'll come up with dozens of pictures of perfect giant skeletons up to 50 feet high, which have been unearthed on archaeological digs all over the world, particularly Turkey. But why isn't it talked about more? And are they real? I don't know. Perhaps influential leaders are rubbing them out of the picture. The Book of Enoch was removed from the Bible for being in the Church of England and the subsequent Roman Catholic Church for being blasphemous. It mentioned the Nephilim and giants. But then there's a discussion to be had here about how controversial information is handled by the media and governments. The Book of Enoch has been suppressed for hundreds of years by the Church, and that's, I'm sure, where the stigma comes from. The contents of my diary probably won't make it onto the front pages, although it should. Angels exist. Reincarnation confirmed. There is a God, or world to reinvent itself, are never going to be splashed across the front page of the tabloids. But it would be wonderful if they were, because to my mind, their significance and relevance to every one of us far outweighs who's been caught with their pants down, or wearing someone else's pants, or not wearing any pants at all. My mum used to call some raised eyebrows when she talked in a matter-of-fact way about the existence of angels, and was usually written off as a harmless nutter. Now I have hundreds, thousands of photographs of things which defy any rational explanation, actual photographs taken on different cameras all over the world, in hugely varying condition, and by lots of other people I've met too. And the funny thing is, the skeptics who dismiss it as easily explained flotsam and jetsam floating about in the air can never offer up the hundreds of pictures they've taken themselves which demonstrate their point. A bit like saying that vaccines are safe. They're effective, but nobody yet has proved that they're safe. Which is why Robert De Niro put up a $100,000 reward for anyone who could prove that a vaccine was safe. Still unclaimed, funnily enough. Anyway, the reason that people who are skeptical can't explain it away properly is because they don't have any of these pictures themselves. But they will try to provide a rational explanation based on dust, cheese, fibres, indigestion, anything, rather than embrace what's staring them in the face. And usually they dedicate 0.1 seconds thought and zero research to the subject before dismissing it out of hand. It's just not important to them, really. And that is the power of programming, control, manipulation, call it what you will. 25th of February. I am going to try my ability as an exorcist out today. Yes, that's right. I'm not planning anything big or expecting Linda Blair to start rotating her head and spraying green muck down me. My good friend Pauline lives in a house in Kent which she says is full of odd things. There is the black entity in the bedroom which looms over her at night and fills her with dread, stops her sleeping. And when I go in her bathroom, which is a lovely bathroom, as bathrooms generally go, I can hear whispering. And I feel that whatever's there doesn't want me there. Pauline is fascinating. Without it being a biggie, when she and I first met at Angela Watkins' mediumship class, we immediately sensed we were married in a previous life, and I was a woodcutter in the forest. It feels like it was the Middle Ages. We lived in a wattle and daub cottage with a thatched roof, with mud from the farm animals and the rain splashed halfway up the white walls. We collected wood which was turned into charcoal in burners. The wood was piled up and covered in rolls of turf. It was burnt slowly until it turned to charcoal. There was always a pot of something bubbling away in the cottage, and wood smoke from the fire heating the pot curled up and out into the sunlight, twinkling through the canopy of trees above. It was when almost all of England was covered by forest. We had a happy life together and lived to be old. Maybe it explains why we're so calm together. There's no unfinished business, as it were. Pauline is very sensitive and struggles to keep visiting spirits and all sorts at bay. It seems any house she lives in becomes active simply because she's there. This particular place is an old building, and I sense it had few residents who were there before her. I connect with the entity in the bedroom who lacks a soul, so it's hard to know how to get rid of it. You can't engage with something which lacks life or intelligence, although I can sense if I don't have a clue how to get it to leave. So I just use my will to push it from the room and out through the window, blocking its way back in mentally. I visualize a fence of protective energy around the walls and bless its sanctity. I announce that this room is now sacred and must not be interfered with. I rap my staff on the shag pile 3 times for good measure, and the familiar low boom and a dark blue wave, like on a very large glass of flaming sambuca, rolls out in my mind from the centre of the room. That should do it. The voices in the bathroom belong to 2 grumpy old women in Victorian scullery maids' outfits. I let my Mongolian yak's teeth necklace spin to feel the energy and where it's concentrated. I can feel it through my feet, too. I'm regrounding myself constantly to protect my own aura from harm. Once I've identified where I feel the presence of the old ladies is strongest, I use the bone on the necklace to extract the energy which is planted in the bathroom. I make a sort of sound as I suck the dark energy wrapped round the bathroom out and expel it. I've met quite a few shaman from Nepal, Bhutan, the Himalayas. And do you know what? They all make that noise. I learnt this technique for extracting unwanted energies off a shaman from Bhutan. It's the first time I've tried this as a sort of doctor's visit, but I feel it's gone quite well. As I'm leaving, Pauline waves from the doorway, but I can sense the two old ladies behind her also waving. Maybe I need a little more practice. 20th of May. The Chilean earthquake followed Haiti by a month. I've been asked to fly out to Chile and work with another geologist, Mike Beavis, who is an expert on the Chilean fault line. Chile holds a world record for the most violent shock ever recorded in 1960, 9.5 on the Richter scale, which is huge. On this trip, I sense very strongly that Sandalphon, Metatron's twin, is riding me, and there is more soul clearing to do. This is one of those experiences where I can feel I'm being given a message. There is a song by Sarah McLachlan called Suitably Angel. I think it's probably the most beautiful song I've ever heard. It's never been a particular hit internationally as a single, but a lot of people seem to know it. It's playing on the radio in the cab on the way from home to Heathrow. When we pick up the hire car at Santiago Airport in Chile, I switch on the radio and Angel is playing. In Chile. We drive to Valparaiso on the coast. When I walk into the hotel, the same song is playing. The angels are saying they're there to greet me, clearly. It's so odd I record it playing in the hotel just to make sure I'm not hallucinating. Chile contrasts very strongly with Haiti. The earthquake damage is relatively light, as the buildings in the main were built to be earthquake-proof. Considering it was an 8.8 magnitude quake as opposed to Haiti's 7.1, it's astonishing how little building damage there actually is. The worst effect seems to have been the tsunami, which inundated the coastline around Concepcion in the south, where the centre of the shock was based. We visit a suburb of Concepcion for dinner, and I'm drawn to the streets around the restaurant. I take some pictures, and there are crowds of orbs in some, but I'm struck by a formation of 4 blue orbs which appear as if they're moving in a coherent shape together past someone's front door. South America's seen its fair share of murder and war. The Spanish conquistadors, the French, English, Dutch, and so on have travelled down the continent, murdering and being murdered in turn. I can sense souls going back hundreds of years who are still around. I instinctively perform a little shamanic ceremony of release every night in my hotel, which actually leaves me exhausted. My wife rings me late one night. I can't even remember which continent she is on at the moment. I can hardly remember where I am myself. I'm so tired and jet-lagged. Oh yes, she's in China. I fall asleep talking to her, and I wake up half an hour later to find she's yelling down the phone at me to close the line as it's costing her $1 a minute. Those are back in the days where you had to ring people. I still feel stupid about doing that. Chile is a very long country. We drive 600 miles, and there is still loads more ground to cover. Katie Brimblecombe is on her first overseas shoot as production manager, and she's doing a brilliant job. Katie is a very sensitive soul and can feel what I feel. She is becoming a sorcerer's apprentice before my eyes. Lovely. We fly down the southern coastline in a helicopter and are amazed by the spectacular, wild southern ocean scenery. Because the upheaval caused by the quakes was so enormous, it's made the entire continent rise 3 meters. A green band of rock is clearly visible above the waves, and the shoreline where it's risen out of the water. Beaches, which were 25 meters wide, are now 100 meters in width as the beach has risen out of the water. The quake displaced such a large mass of rock, it has slowed the Earth's rotation a tiny but actually measurable amount. 27th of May. Back in Glastonbury again, I meet the first person I've encountered who genuinely does not seem to be human. I talk to him for 2 hours, and he answers my questions about our ancestors and the Dracos, the galactic elders, aliens, other beings, unicorns, anything and everything I can think of to throw at him. And he speaks fluidly and unhesitatingly. He's a strange-looking fish anyway, very tall and bony. But there's nothing I can engage with him on which is earthly, like his favourite food, places he's visited, his childhood. After 2 hours, I realise we've spoken about every manner of crazy thing, just nothing whatever about him personally. My skill is getting a bead on someone's makeup, the definition of their essence as people, happy, sad, positive, negative. With this guy, nothing. He thinks he's been chosen as a mouthpiece for an ancient race of aliens who walk amongst us on Earth called the Greys, the classic little men depicted that they found in the crashed UFO at Roswell, allegedly. He describes their scouts as tall, pale, hairless beings who like to disguise their identities by wearing long coats, hats, and sunglasses. He says they can levitate so they float above the ground. And I remember a friend's mother sitting me down once and describing exactly these sort of figures. She claimed they'd been floating in the air above her car as she drove home along a country lane one night. She was adamant about what she'd seen and very specific. I believed her. After I leave, I feel very disconcerted about the meeting. My sense is I've just been talking to my first alien. 9th of June. I'm going to tell you an odd little tale now about a murder which has happened almost right outside our house, and it illustrates that the angels never quite leave me alone and that there's always work to do. I look out of the window and there's a body lying on the pavement covered in a brown sheet. Police are everywhere. I stare at the body. I know who it is. I know. The police come round to take copies of our security camera footage as they cover the pavements immediately around the house and might yield some evidence. Security cameras are great for capturing orbs, by the way, at night. They go into infrared mode, which is perfect for seeing the occasional orb. They float into view, dance around to show off and say, "Hi, I'm here," then whiz away at speed at odd angles. I asked the policeman if the murder victim's name is who I think it is. He denies it, but it's easy for me to know it is him. What's strange is the murdered man has some history with us. I once caught him torturing his pregnant dog by repeatedly kicking a ball at her. The dog was whimpering in pain and fright, and I asked him to stop. He almost took my head off. So I went home and called the RSPCA, as what he was doing to the dog was just downright cruel. Turned out they knew this character well, and he had history of animal abuse. The dog was taken off him, and he was banned from ever owning another one. So, to express his gratitude, he slashed the tyres of the vans we owned at the time for our dog walking business, which we used to park outside the house. Each van had to be put on the back of a breakdown truck and taken to QuickFit for 4 new tyres each. £3,750 later, we were back in business, although there were a lot of dogs crossing their legs. Oh, and he threw in threatening to kill my wife when he bumped into her in the street and boasted about what he'd done. So there wasn't much love lost between us. I'm walking past the spot where he died that night, and I can feel him standing there. He's asking me where he is and why no one can see him. He says he's very scared that he doesn't understand what's happened to him. I ask him, out loud, if he'd like some help to go on his way. He nods and says he's sorry for everything which has happened between us and for everything else he's done. I ask him if he knows what the Akashic record is, and he says they're waiting to show him his life and he doesn't want to go. I tell him he must, and it'll be okay. He'll go to heaven once he's seen the error of his ways. With a quick glance both ways up and down the street, I recite a prayer of release in my funny language and take pictures. Metatron is there, and the stellar gateway opens to receive him. Reluctantly, he lopes off and doesn't look back once. The orb, floating above the pavement, gradually fades until it's no longer visible.